Joining me now from Washington to discuss the implications of this visit is a global affairs analyst, Calvin Dark. And also joining me to speak on this is a public affairs analyst, Adeni Kunu. Thanks for coming on the news.
Thank you very much for having me.
First of all, Adeni, let's talk about the importance of this visit to Nigeria. How important is it?
Well, it's as important as you needing oxygen to live, because the global implication of the President of the UN General Assembly President coming to visit you means that the most powerful force in the world have really come to roost, where you live.
Okay.
And as a result of that, certain things could be favorable. But oftentimes when you have a visitor come, two things are often affected.
All right.
The visitor comes with presents, but the visitor is expected not to go the same way he or she has visited. So for Espinosa, who has visited, one of the things she talked about that I feel is very important is the issue of climate change.
All right.
We know the batterings that have happened to the Lake Chad region, and we know the unrest that that particular, receding of the Lake Chad itself has caused, the poverty and a lot of problems in that region. So I believe very strongly that this is to consolidate what the president himself said about 2 weeks plus ago when he visited the United Arab Emirates and said, we need you people to come and help us resuscitate or revive the Lake Chad region. So one of the things will be to address the issues of drought that has actually affected that region, ditto many other parts of Nigeria, amongst other things.
All right, so let's move to Calvin Dark, who's joining us in Washington via Skype. Now, what advantage can Nigeria derive from these visits?
Well, I think this visit and the upcoming presidency of the 74th session of the UN General Assembly is a really big opportunity for Nigeria to fill the leadership back. Because as we've seen, partly because of the President of the United States, there has been less support for multilateral cooperation, at least among some of the big powers. And particularly as my fellow panelists are saying about climate change, it's really unfortunate that it's taken a back seat from the United States and following many other nations. But I think in general, it's a really big opportunity for leadership, and I hope that Nigeria can take full advantage of it, not only in the country on, but on the world stage.
All right, so let's look at the successes of the UN. How can you assess the successes of the United Nations so far?
Well, what I would say is this, that we have several very pressing problems across the world that affect everybody. Climate change is one of them. Like I said, that's a complicated issue for some countries. But also human rights, democracy promotion, and cooperation on issues of migration are areas where there's a lot to be done, but the UN has provided a forum to at least have everyone tackle the issue in an organized way. And I think over the long term, the United Nations has been probably the most successful international body that the world has ever seen. But as we must remember, an organization is, as they say, only as strong as its weakest link. And so we've got to make sure that there's leadership at the top to strengthen every one of the members and their commitment to the UN mission.
All right, now, looking at all of this, she has said that the expansion of the UN Security Council was an issue that had proven largely divisive and contentious. Now, do you think she's making a case for Nigeria to come on board?
I think that is something that definitely should be pursued. I personally agree with changing the makeup of the Security Council, or at least expanding it in a more equitable way. But I do not think there's any chance of that in the near term, because we already see the current composition of the UN Security Council and the veto-happy members is always a bone of contention. So I think it's a very admirable goal, but I don't think it's realistic anytime soon.
All right, so Adeni Kunu, looking at all of this, the UN is concerned about climate change, Lake Chad, you mentioned, and all of that. How can the UN help? Because climate change is a big issue all around the world. Of course, you can see in Nigeria how the sun has been biting. So how can the UN help?
I like to refer to what happened in one of the sessions they had last year at the height of the Rohingya crisis, where they said certain amounts of money should be put together to help the Rohingya people. I think one of the things that we can derive from the UN is to help seek support of countries that are financially better than us, obviously, and also those whose business interests and investments could also be affected by that region, to please put some money together to help resuscitate it. Then at the same time, we also have to look at how technology can be deployed. We've got very advanced members of the United Nations that have the capacity. If you look at the technology deployed where the United Arab Emirates is now an oasis, we can deploy the same technology where water could actually be taken in from somewhere where it is more, and the Lake Chad region particularly becomes buoyant, becomes alive again. That's one. Then don't forget, Calvin mentioned something important, which has to do with human rights. I think one of the things many of us don't consider is a lot of human rights violation at mid-level and at the height of it in Nigeria. You're talking about the military interventions in war zones and the fact that they need to be tactful in dealing with the civilians. We know the report that Amnesty International Nigeria brought out where a lot of our military officers were indicted because they didn't actually stick to the way they should do certain things. That's also one of it. Don't forget, on our visit also, she will be meeting with women. That is one key thing that we cannot stop discussing. The fact that inclusion has become more than necessary in the 21st century. A situation where a region, for instance, I need to say this, that as we speak, well over 56,000 women are needed as teachers in the north. So we're talking about a region of the country, let alone other regions that also have the same need. So for Espinosa, it is a very auspicious time in the history of this country that she's coming in. And do not also forget that the body language appears to me that perhaps Professor Tijani Bandi may be favored to take over. But one more thing, Nigeria has been clamoring, especially, the enticement that comes with the Security Council. But if you did a careful examination of those who are permanent members there, you find out that they are worlds apart from us in terms of technology, in terms of strength, in terms of defense, in terms of position, in terms of economic impact. So for Nigeria to clamor for that position, I know that Nigeria has done a lot in terms of support troops on the African continent and even across in some parts of Europe. But for you to actually become a strong member of that Security Council, there's a lot you have to do. All right,
so Calvin, let's look at Nigeria's resolve to become the president of the UN GA. Is it a possibility, going by the fact that we've done a whole lot when it comes to peacekeeping missions and all of that, is that a possibility?
I think so. I think that Nigeria has made its case that it is a leader, with dealing with some very challenging domestic issues, but also in the sub-region, on the continent, and around the world. And let me tell you, from an American point of view, advice that I would give Nigeria as it makes its case, and if it does take over the presidency, is a lot of the things that we've been mentioning, from women's rights, human rights, climate change, security, anti-terrorism. If the UN General Assembly, led potentially by Nigeria, can help frame these issues as issues that affect us all, meaning people in America sometimes don't think that they are affected by climate change issues in Nigeria or women's rights issues in other parts of the world. But if you start to frame it as this affects us all, people in U.S. and other Western countries will start to care more because they'll realize how important it is that you just exist to help, but it exists to everybody.
All right, Calvin Dark, thank you very much for talking to us. Of course, Adini Kuno, thank you very much for talking to us as well.
Thank you for having me. Thank you indeed.